All right, so we're back, and we're still exploring the dynamic nature of the entrepreneurial brain. And last week we looked at fear, and the point that this it looks very flat at the moment. It looks quite linear. But actually we're thinking that it really is more of a 3D, multi-dimensional, dynamic situation in terms of the emotions and the feelings and the states that you go through as an entrepreneur in terms of the entrepreneurial brain. So we spoke about fear last week. We're going to look at, in our last session, we're going to look at Ignite today. So more the intentional awakening to new possibilities, discovering new opportunities, and understanding new technologies, and adopting a tenacious mindset based on exponential goals, abundance thinking, insights, and a massive transformative purpose. So thanks for joining me again, Lloyd. If you want to see how we unpacked, if you want to see how we unpacked fear last week, there's our previous video covered that. Today we're going to unpack sort of the next dynamic element in what we see as multifaceted states of the entrepreneurial brain, and we're kind of grappling a little bit with how this should be described. It is very much, if you think about the brain and the synapses and the connection of neural pathways, it's a very dynamic thing. It's not something that you can depict in a linear way. But as an entrepreneur, your mindset would develop in a certain way, and it depends on your frame of reference, your experience, your what you're trying to achieve, how much success you've had or otherwise, how much you've learned from your failures. All of those things affect your mindset and affect the development. So after fear, what we're anticipating or illustrating is an Ignite element. And Lloyd, we've broken this down into this acronym, which let's talk through it. So we're saying start by being intentional.
Absolutely. I think just that word ignite, I mean, it sort of it gives the impression of sort of starting something, sort of like, that initial flint that starts a fire. And I think that's exactly what this whole sort of element is all about. It's about starting that fire, getting those fires to roar. That first element that we discussed last time in terms of fear was really about sort of creating that awareness and understanding of sort of where you're at. Now that you've got a greater awareness there, now we start to make things happen. So yeah, this Ignite, I think, just fits really nicely. And I think the imagery that goes along with it as well works really nicely here. But ultimately, like it says there, enlightened thinking, that's really what we're working towards. And you mentioned it in your description just now, and it's also listed there. But that intentionality behind the thinking, I think, is really critical. We sort of, whatever challenges you face with, whatever position you're in, the thinking that you're engaging needs to be very intentional. There's got to be sort of a very clear purpose behind it. So I think that intentionality is critical as a starting point, and I think it fits quite nicely there at the top of this acronym.
Yeah, and it makes me think of being mindful, and being purposeful, kind of thing. So yeah, all good.
Absolutely. And I think that intentionality sort of feeds, I mean, all of these words obviously sort of interconnected, but the goal-drivenness, that goal-driven behavior, we start to sort of understand or seek a bit more clarity. If we sort of know what we're working towards, this goal-driven element here sort of gives us a little bit more direction. We sort of have a bit more understanding of which way we need to be going.
Yeah.
It's not about achieving that goal just yet, but we know we're moving towards something. And I think that's the important thing, which again links quite nicely to the idea of intentional. But you're driven by the goals.
Yeah, and not forgetting the massive transformative purpose. So we'll unpack that separately at some point, and there's lots of content on that which we can share. But so there are lots of small goals will get you to the massive transformative purpose as well.
Sure. I think the next word, need. I think it's got a sort of a dual role to play here. Is that there's a need in the sense that previously we spoke about focus, emotion, ability, and responsibility, and I think from that we have a sense of clarity around our needs, sort of what and why from a personal perspective. So I think that definitely still plays a role. And then on the other side, we've got needs in terms of, well, what are we needing to do? What are we trying to achieve? Which obviously again links very strongly to intentional and goal driven. But I think understanding the needs of and being able to sort of answer some of those why questions, I think is really critical, just to help again encourage a bit more clarity of mind, clarity of thought at this point.
Yeah.
So understanding the needs is critical. And
of course, later on we talk about customer, but as one of the pathways. But and maybe just to touch on it quickly. So mindset is about the way you think, the way you work encompasses team practices and skills, and the way your value offer is customer resources and solutions. And of course, when you exploring need, it's not just about your own need or the customer's need, but it's also about the tribe and the community. So really thinking about the greater good of the collective is an important part of need.
Absolutely. So next we got insights, and I think that's a fundamental component to this element of Ignite, because really at this point it's really about exploring and gaining some sort of understanding in the way things work, different ways things work, alternatives, options, and really just sort of improving our understanding so that we're able to better sort of connect the dots for ourselves. Obviously, that's going to feed into an enhanced sort of perspective on things, which just helps us drive and move forward.
Yeah. So I mean, for me, there's two things here. The one is that we spoke about part of this model not being linear and flat. Your insights also need to be exponential. So you need to understand exponentiality. You need to realize that the exponential possibilities are not based on the perspective that you have currently. Lloyd, did you talk about the concept of the cave there yet?
No, not yet. I think we'll save that for Enlightened.
Oh, of course, yes. Okay, that comes into Enlightened. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So then tenacity. So my favorite quote on tenacity comes from Seth Godin, and he said, "Persistence is doing something again and again until it works. It sounds like pestering for a reason. Tenacity is using new data to make new decisions, to find new pathways, to find new ways to achieve a goal when the old ways didn't work. Telemarketers are persistent. We can all relate to that. Nike is tenacious." What do you think of that, Paul? Lloyd, sorry. Yes, sir.
Absolutely. I think what's nice about that is, as you said, it's not just about being persistent. It's about doing it differently. And just you mentioning Nike there, I just watched a new Nike advert this morning, which every single advert that they've released over the last while that I can remember is they've tried to approach things differently, and they do so well at it. And I think that's exactly what we need at this element here, and what we're wanting to encourage and help develop in individuals is this ability to be tenacious, that don't just keep doing the same thing over and over and hoping that you're going to sort of break through the wall.
Yeah.
We've got to look for new ways to get around, over, or under the wall, which is quite exciting.
New pathways and new possibilities. Very
Absolutely.
Exciting. And I'll leave Enlightened to you.
So, yeah, I mean, this idea of being enlightened, it certainly, for me, it sort of links back to, for any of you that are sort of into philosophy, but Plato spoke about the cave, and please go ahead and Google the cave by Plato. But he essentially spoke about this idea that most of us are living sort of chained inside this cave, staring at a wall. And on that wall, we see reflections or shadows of reality. But that's what we perceive to be real, because that's all we've known. And this whole idea of enlightenment comes from being able to break the shackles from where we sort of chained in the cave, and being able to kind of step outside of the cave into life, into the brightness of life, the fullness, the richness of life. And we start to realize what we perceive to be, life and all there was to it was really just a sort of a dull shadow or reflection of what reality can or should be. And I think that's that really sort of speaks to this this type of thinking that can play such a critical role as a sort of enlightened type of thinking, just this abundance thinking. Just there's so much more, which is very exciting.
Yeah, and the realization that we really don't know what we don't know, and the more we explore and learn and understand, the more we realize what we don't know. And the more we understand abundance, the more possibility, exponential possibility there is there. Lloyd, thanks very much. For those of you that don't know, Lloyd is our resident psychologist. So we're kind of coming at this very casually, but not without some credibility. Next week, we'll explore the next element of the development of the entrepreneurial mindset in the context of the entrepreneurial brain, and it may be early next week, but looking forward to it. So awesome. Thanks, Lloyd.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Craig.
Cheers. Cool. Stop.